Welcome to the Grit Blueprint Podcast. I'm your host, Stefanie Couch. This podcast is about branding, building, and business. It also highlights the grit that it takes to be successful in business and in life. Let's get started. Hi, and welcome to the Grit Blueprint Podcast with Stefanie Couch. Today, I'm excited to be joined by my friend Katy Devlin. Welcome, Katy.
Oh, thank you so much, Stefanie.
Thank you for being here. And we are excited to talk a little bit about the amazing things that you're doing in the glass industry. And we have some common friends, and we met at GlassBuild where I spoke. You had me there to speak at a women's event, and we are just really excited to get to know you a little bit more today and ask some questions about all the amazing things you're doing and have been doing in your career. So I will first let you start off. Tell me a little bit about who you are, what you're doing, and how you got to where you are today in this amazing industry.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me, Stefanie. It's great to see you. It's been really fun to work with you, since GlassBuild. So I have been in the glass industry since I was in college. I was 21 years old. I needed an internship. I was a journalism major, and there was this random little ad for Glass magazine out there. And I thought, okay, well, this will be 6 months. I'll just work this internship. And 20 years later, I like to say I'm the longest running intern in the glass industry. But, Glass Magazine is part of the National Glass Association. We're one of the association's two publications. The other is Window and Door. Glass covers, the whole architectural glass segment, everything from, the folks that actually take the sand and make it into glass, through the fabricators, all the suppliers that make that possible, going down to the contract glazers, the glass shops, the folks who are in the field doing that amazing work and actualizing these spaces. So I joined as an intern. They hired me on as a writer, and I have spent the last couple of decades just growing in my role there. And I'm currently the content director of the NGA. So I'm in charge of the magazines as well as the content for our big events like GlassBuild.
Yeah, and I was shocked. I truly had never seen anything quite like GlassBuild. I've been to a lot of shows, but I don't know what I expected, but 8,000 people and what I saw were what's not in my mind. So it's an amazing event. And I know that you've had a big hand in making it into what it is today. Tell a little bit more about how that event, what is GlassBuild? And I know we're about to go to another amazing event, BEC. Talk a little bit about what those events do for the industry and what the purpose is and what people are getting, because I think it's a really cool thing that y'all are doing.
Yeah, I mean, GlassBuild is the industry's gathering place, right? It's the one, it's the largest North American glass and fenestration industry event. 8,000 people. That's a heck of a lot of folks who care about glass, glazing, windows, doors, and we all come together and we can put on our glass nerd hats and really, solutions share. We can see what's coming from the exhibitors. The technologies are amazing. You asked about that a little later on. I mean, it's just the place where you can learn, where you connect, where you can grow. You have to be there if you're in glass.
Absolutely.
So that's
the technology was crazy to me. Like when I walked through and saw these huge machines that are set up on the floor, some of them were like 50, 60 feet long, I think. It was very impressive. I was like, holy cow, this is such an amazing setup to learn from. I was actually really intrigued by the machinery. So it's pretty cool.
It is amazing, right? It's a special thing to get into a glass plant or any plant and see how things work. But, come to GlassBuild and you can see it on the floor. You can see the insulating lines just running right in front of you, the robots that are lifting up lights and moving them from one place to another. It's exciting.
Yeah, it is for sure. Well, I know that you have obviously been a woman in this industry for a long time now, and we're all working to get more women in this industry and other diverse groups. And I know NGA has a lot of things they're doing to really move forward that mission. Talk to me a little bit about that. And what would you say to young women that want to maybe explore, whether it's glass or some other type of industry in this construction space? Would you say to them as a word of advice
Yeah, I mean, the glass industry, the construction industry, manufacturing industry, fenestration industry, these are all male-dominated businesses. Um, and, and we're in the middle of a labor crisis.
Yeah.
Like, we have a huge pool of folks who just don't even realize that there are incredible opportunities
Hmm.
for them in these businesses. Um, so I think, I've been really lucky being at the NGA. NGA is led primarily, I think we've got women in almost all of our leadership roles. Um, I have always had just incredible women mentors to work with at the NGA. And so even in the midst of this male dominated industry, I feel like I've had a niche and I've really been able to
Yeah.
learn from women in the field. You ask about our sort of NGA's mission in
Hmm.
this. I think it's what we've been trying to do at the Women in Glass and Fenestration event at GlassBuild and then at BEC is just to show that women are thriving and leading this
Hmm.
in so many ways in the glass and fenestration industry. If you can see it, you can be it.
Yeah.
And I truly believe, I mean, that's what you're doing with your work is just,
Hmm.
showing the next generation that this is possible.
Yeah. When I was in corporate, I remember, some of the women that I would see out either on an event or in a magazine or whatever it was. And it really was that moment in your brain where you think, okay, because she did, I also can.
Yeah.
And the more people that can do that and we can showcase they are doing it and making amazing work out of it and thriving, then the better off we are as a group and really as an industry because it's been proven. I mean, we need, like you said, there's this giant labor shortage. It's
Yeah.
not a nice to have anymore. It's a must have. We have to fill those gaps and it will be filled the way we've traditionally done it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's been amazing. Let's see. You asked about advice
Yeah.
for young women or new entrants into the industry. I think find a mentor.
Mm.
Have you had some amazing? You must have had some amazing
I
mentors.
did. I had a few, one woman that was a very strong mentor for me throughout my last few years of my career that was very high up in the company. And she was in a different segment of the business. So kind of saw things differently than I did. That actually really helped.
Mhm. Yeah, I think find folks who you admire and who you
Hmm.
want to work with. I think I've been surprised at the response when you just ask the question.
Yeah.
I think the question, can you tell me what your day to day is like? What's your
Hmm.
job like? How did you get here? This exact
Sure.
conversation that we are having really normalizes that process.
Yeah.
And to have someone who knows that you are curious, who knows that
Hmm.
you are looking to grow, you suddenly have an ally in one space and then in another, and it's pretty tremendous. Nicole Harris is the president and CEO of the NGA, and I've worked with her pretty closely throughout my entire career, but I just feel so grateful for all of the conversations we've been able to have just about um, everything from, issues that a glazer might face, the way
Sure.
she's been able to help me untangle some of that too, to just how to lead a team, personnel management questions. Uh, it it's so important to have someone that you can talk to.
Yeah, and I think one important thing that I want to point out is obviously we're two women talking about
Mhm.
women in construction, but there are a lot of amazing mentors and supporters and allies that I've had that have been males.
Mhm.
And we can't discount that. It is great to have a female mentor, and I think you need more than one, most likely. And depending on where you are in your career, there may not be a female. There were a lot of times that there was no one I could have asked that would have been in my job or in my place that I was working, those types of things that were females. So I had male allies and sponsors that helped me and mentored me. And that is important too. You've got to have a well rounded group of people. So don't sleep on that as women in
Mhm.
construction
Yeah.
because they may know enough to help you get exactly where you want to go. And you don't have to, worry about the fact that they're a man. So
Yep.
men and women, we need everybody to get us to where we need to go as women in the next step. And I think that's an important thing. And we don't want to lose sight of that. But it is always very powerful to have a woman that, like you said, that has done it, and you can ask exactly how they did it. So
Mhm.
sometimes I think that challenge, like, where are the landmines, right? What
Yeah.
can I know that I don't need to go do based on what you've seen or learned? And boy, I would tell my 25-year-old self some stories like, don't just, maybe just say that a little different or ask the
Yeah.
question different. So I think the challenge part is important too. I love that. Well, speaking of challenges, tell me about a specific challenge that maybe you have faced being a woman in a male dominated industry like the glass and fenestration industry, and how you've overcome that. I'm sure as a young out of college student to
Mhm.
now, there have been lots of challenges in your career. Tell me about some of those and how you've overcome them.
Yeah, I think it is so easy for women to be discounted, especially young women. I I think I'm a familiar enough face in a lot of our events now.
Mhm.
Folks have seen me in the magazine for a while, so they know who I am. But when I was starting out, walking up to booths, kind of doing cold calls, whatever it
Mhm.
might be, it was tough to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
Um, and I think the advice that I would give to my 22, 23-year-old self who's doing that would just be to you know, keep going
Yeah.
and, be prepared, know your questions, but also know it's not really about you.
Yeah.
People just they've got a sense of who you are when you walk up to them and you can prove them wrong.
Yeah, that's a great piece of advice. And that don't quit piece, it
Hmm.
applies to everything in life because you're going to really stink at stuff when you start. I mean, I think a lot of us, we think we know, like what I know when I got out of college, I was like ready to go set the world on fire. And there were a lot of lessons that came after between here and now. And I'm sure there will be a lot more after this, but
Yeah.
it's knowing that you're not going to be good at probably that first cold call or that first, ask that you make of some big person up the chain, but you got to keep doing it. And the more you do it, the more confidence and courage that you have towards
Hmm.
that the next time. So it's great advice to just like don't give up and keep
Hmm.
going. Love that.
Yeah.
And it's funny because a lot of times that's the thing, we want that quick win, and
Hmm.
we do give up because we didn't win thinking, well, I'm not good at this. But of course you aren't. You've never done it before. So how would you be good?
Yeah. Yep.
Well, the next thing we want to talk about is a trend that is up and coming. It's technology everywhere we look. AI is a topic that we're going to be speaking about at BEC, which I'm very
Hmm.
excited to talk to this audience about. And I know you see a lot of emerging trends because you're writing about them, you're hearing about them. What are you seeing today, whether it's in glass and fenestration or just in general in the industry, that's exciting to you? And how do you think those trends are going to change our world outlook and how we do business in this industry?
I mean, I think we are in the midst of a pretty massive transformation and how
Mhm.
we do business. Um, I am so excited to hear your talk at BEC. If I don't know when this is going to drop, but
Yeah.
if
It'll be
there's still
before that.
time, get yourself to Nashville,
Yep.
folks. This is going to be a really fun event for the glass industry, um, and yeah, we're going to hear a phenomenal keynote on AI and how to use
Thank
that in
you.
your business.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
excited about it.
so I mean, I would start there. I think that is one trend that we all need to be watching. Who knows exactly how? I think this entire year the narrative has been like AI is coming for you,
Yeah.
and I think the way that you and I have chatted about it is like AI is a tool that can
Yes.
really make your business, the work that you're putting out. It can really give you a nice boost.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily the doom and gloom. Who knows?
Sure.
Maybe in 5 years we'll.
Yeah, we may be all, or maybe somebody's mad because I told him how to use Chat GPT. But I think it's sort of like internet type thing where it came and everybody's kind of unsure, and then there was a real shift where it was like, okay, this is here to stay. It's
Mhm.
not going to be something we can live without. Let's throw our fax machine away, or at least put it in the back closet and see what happens with this computer stuff. So I
Yeah.
definitely feel like it's there. Yeah, and, I feel like the machinery, the automation, all of the things
Mhm.
that we can do it's like automation and AI are not the same thing, but they sort of are looped in together. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's going to be huge too, because I'm even seeing, like we're creating a CRM, some of the automations that can be done with that, where, automated follow-ups and automated, information from DMs from an Instagram or things like that, that you're capturing
Mm-hmm.
without a human having to go grab that. It's huge because there's
Mm-hmm.
only so many people to go around. With this labor shortage, it's only going to get
Yeah.
worse. So the technology is a good, like you said, tool to really get you to where you want to go.
Yeah, and we've seen this in our world history. The Industrial Revolution changed everything,
Mhm.
and it's not that people didn't work; we just did very different work. So
Yeah.
I think it's good for everybody to be incredibly aware of what's out there, but don't get spooked. Um, but then looking at other technologies, I'm glad you mentioned automation. I think our industry is it's notorious for being a bit slow to adopt,
Mhm.
particularly on the fabrication manufacturing side of things. We've had automated solutions for a while, but
Mhm.
most companies that have adopted something, glass fabricators, it's kind of an island of automation. They bought one machine.
Yeah.
This is a big investment, and it does require a lot of time to incorporate it in a way that is going to help you. I mean, it's like everything, if you just, when I got my first iPhone, I probably used about, 2% of its
Sure.
capabilities. It just was
Mhm.
like, you just don't even know. And then you slowly learn. And probably now I'm at about 10%, but we get there. You know?
Killing it.
Yep. My toddler will know more than I do in about 2 years about what to do with it. Um, So, I think automation is the labor shortage will make this a must-have
Mhm.
for a lot of companies to incorporate.
Yeah.
Right following right after BEC in Nashville, we have NGA's GPAD event. So
Mhm.
BEC ends at noon, and then at 2, we've got a day and a half event dedicated to the glass fabricators. And that is all of the solutions providers, the machinery folks coming together and answering kind of the top questions from the glass fabricators,
Yeah.
fully focused on automation. Um, and we also have actually an AI, how might AI impact glass manufacturing? That'll be a
Mhm.
talk there. So it will marry very nicely with what we've
Yeah.
got going on at the BEC.
I think it's going to be interesting to see how they adopt that, like you said, when it becomes a little more mainstream. Because
Mhm.
these machines, they come out. I worked in door manufacturing for a long time, so I'm very aware. We would buy these huge machines that were very expensive, and you still had to have people around. But maybe you had 4 people instead of 15 people. Working the line, and you're not sure, is this really worth it, until, like you said, you figure out the 10% on the
Yeah.
iPhone. And then, even then, are you using it to its full extent? So I
Mhm.
think the more we know, and the more people that start talking about, oh, well, I did change this, and the first few weeks was a little rocky because I wasn't sure. And now our capacity has gone up to X, and we're
Mhm.
producing and making so much more with so many, fewer people or whatever it is. That's huge, because if you can't find people to run at capacity, full capacity, but then you can automate half of it and only have to have
Mhm.
50% of the people, it's not like people are losing their jobs. You can't find
Yeah.
people to fill those jobs. So that's the biggest thing. I think it's going to be huge in the next 2 to 3 years. And
Mhm.
AI will be a part of that, and we'll be doing things with automation and AI, I'm sure. But it's coming, and I think people are
Mhm.
adopting it quicker. I'm seeing a lot more automation in the door machines, but I was actually in a door shop yesterday taking some pictures of for some clients, and
Mhm.
I was with someone that's never walked a door shop before, and he said, "Can this not all be automated?" And I kind of just laughed, and I'm like, well, like parts of it can be, but it's just not how it works today. So it's a
Yeah,
good question.
yeah. Yeah, so I'm excited for that. I think also with automation, again focusing on people is um, solutions for handling that are
Mhm.
safer and really even out who can do a lot of these roles. Like
Yeah.
there was a time when you would need just people were doing everything by hand, and that's
Mhm.
just not the case.
Yeah.
Which then opens up these roles to so many different types of bodies. It's
Mhm.
it becomes possible for a lot more folks to do a job
Absolutely.
well.
Yeah.
So
That's a big deal. when you can go from 2% or 20% of the people can do this to 50% or 75%, that's huge.
Yeah. And they're doing it safer. I mean, there are a lot of at GlassBuild, we have a Glazing Executives Forum. It's kind of a smaller conference for executives of glazing firms, but we had a great panel up there of folks who supply handling equipment, those little mini cranes or even just tiny lifters. And much of the conversation was about how the job of a glazer, 10, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, that those folks might not be able to work after 45. They just, their bodies can't, your backs, arms, just repetitive stress injuries from handling these massive lights that have only gotten bigger. Glass is so much heavier than it used to be just because it's triple glazed or it's a larger size. So, we need these solutions to keep people safe, to keep the workforce we have, and to make sure more people can do the job.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. Well, let's move into professional development. I know that you obviously focus a lot on having other people around you, mentoring you. We talked about that. We talked about conferences where you have people learning and doing all these amazing things. What do you think that success is defined by for you at this point in your career? I know you've done a lot of professional movement in your career upwards, and you're in a great spot now as a content director. What does success look like to you today?
So I really mulled over this question when I saw it. I think for me, success, number one, is feeling invigorated about what I'm doing every day. I need to have a role that allows me to be creative, that allows me to stretch, to come up with an idea, and to know that there is an open ear for that idea on the other end. I think that is so validating for anybody who's, and that has been the case since I was an intern. It's part of the culture of the NGA, and it allows us to sort of launch events like Women in Glass and Fenestration that came out of, our friend Mel. It was her idea to just get all the women together for a photo op. And 2 years later, we've got a whole event that is, up at a packed stage at GlassBuild. So that feels really, it's not just validating. I mean, it just really makes you feel like you're doing something exciting for yourself, but exciting for the industry and the association. So that's number one. Number two is in everything I do, I want to make sure that it aligns with sort of my moral and ethical framework, looking at the world. And I think our industry has tremendous potential to do good. Just 2 years ago, 2022 was the International Year of Glass. I don't know if you knew that.
I did know that.
Yeah, the United Nations proclaimed it the International Year of Glass. And as part of that effort, we at the NGA and a lot of our partner companies were given the platform to say what glass can do. And our tagline at the NGA was "Glass can save the world." And I truly believe that. The climate crisis is probably the biggest challenge facing the world right now. And a major intervention is the built environment. Buildings consume, I think it's 40% they're creating 40% of our greenhouse gas emissions. 40%. Like if we can address the way that we build buildings, we can make a massive impact on our emissions. And obviously the equation is pretty complex, but the glass industry is part of this, and it's part of the solution. And I'm really excited about the work that we can do in this realm. And through that initiative, the International Year of Glass, I was able to speak at the UN. I mean, what a wild, surprising, way to look at your career and be like, oh, okay. Just moderating a panel that also featured Urmila Soel, our Vice President of Technical and Advocacy. But, again, talking about validation of feeling like what you do matters, that really made me confident that what we do matters on a global scale. And then looking smaller, the glass industry, fenestration industry, the door business, these are businesses that need people and that can make a pretty phenomenal career for a lot of folks.
Absolutely.
So when we're doing what we do, not everything is about saving the world. Sometimes you just have to say, let's give you a great job that will keep you safe and we'll make sure you have the tools and the training to do this safely, that you'll be able to make great income and and this is a great career. So that's another part of it. So for me, like, success is sort of in those more motivating factors, internally and externally.
Well, and I think just one thing I wanted to point out is you started this job a long time ago as an intern, thinking it was a 6-month deal. You spoke at the UN. Like, you don't know how life is going to happen, and you never can underestimate or overestimate the power of you getting in there and really going for it and passionately pursuing something. I think feeling that passion for what you do, in the creativity and the integration of really building that career that you've done has been really awesome in itself. But then you get to do things like go speak at the UN or put these huge conferences together. So for younger women, especially, I would just say, don't limit yourself in your beliefs of what you can do. Most of the time, the things that we stop and we say, I don't know if that I can do that, that is up here. Very few times is it actually not possible. Now, there are some times you're like, I don't think I could dunk a basketball. Like, physics just come in there, But with a ladder, I can make it happen. But there are very few times that that's true, where you can't do what you want to do in life. And so that's a great example. You never know what life's going to bring you, or how you're going to be able to thrive in a place that maybe you thought was just for a few months. So keep going with things and keep developing, and never give up on yourself, because that self-doubt will stop you. It's a stop sign. But if you can get around that, you can do whatever you want in life. So that leads me a little bit to our next topic, which is How Women Rise. And this is a book that I love. It changed my entire career. It is written by Sally Helgenson and Marshall Goldsmith. And Build Women is doing a program called the How Women Rise in Construction program. And we are going to be helping women, hopefully all over the globe, learn about these habits that hold us back. A lot of times I think we think about the environment. We may even blame men. We blame other women. We blame all these other circumstances in life for things. But when you start to turn around and look that mirror in the face and say, oh, maybe I'm holding myself back, that's really where we can professionally develop quickly, because it's our own self we can change a lot easier than we can change other people or environment. So I want to talk a little bit today about just 2 of those habits. And the first one, I believe women really struggle with this, because I've seen a lot of women in action doing things, and then when you mention that they're doing it, they're like, I wasn't doing that. Like, you actually were actively, I saw you doing this job already. And that is reluctance to claim your achievements, not raising your hand and saying, hey, I did that, or I successfully completed that. Can you tell me about a time or situation where you struggled to claim your work, or really talk about what you've done to someone, whether it's a teammate or someone you reported to, customer, whatever it was, and how did you handle that?
I mean, I think I struggle with this all the time on a regular basis, and I think most women do. We are taught that it's bragging to take ownership of something that you've done. We are taught to sort of share our success with everybody around us. And I think there's a balance. I lead a team of tremendous people at the magazine. And when I get a compliment on the magazine, I am definitely pointing, giving the hurrah to my entire team, because that is they need to be elevated in that. And they've done just tremendous work on that. But I think there's like a semantic thing that so many women do. And I'm very guilty of this. I'll get a compliment on something and I will deflect it, say, or I will change the pronouns from I to we. I'll say, I will have undertaken a task with some other folks, maybe who offered a little bit of input, and I will say we.
Yeah.
I think that's half a lack of, um, maybe a bit of it is a lack of confidence, or feeling like a presentation will be made more solid if folks know that there's a we behind it,
Right.
versus just me. But the other is like a reluctance to be thought of as bragging. So that's something that I am acutely aware of in myself.
Mhm.
But when I was a young person, oh my goodness, this was a very big challenge.
Yeah. I see that a lot with even compliments. You know, like a
Mhm,
woman gets a compliment and we say something to deflect it, whether it's a
mhm,
physical compliment, I like your shirt, whatever it is. So there's always something after that. And I tell young women a lot. First thing I say is like
mhm.
stop apologizing,
Yep.
and the second thing is take the compliment because
Mhm,
whether it's genuine or not, it doesn't really matter to you. Like take the
mhm,
compliment, say thank you, that's so kind, and move on, and don't deflect. And that's really hard to
mhm.
do when we are taught to be quiet. We're taught
Yeah.
to, take up less space. We're taught to be polite. I mean, I'm from the South. My mom still asks me if I told someone thank you. Did you tell him thank you for that? Like, yeah, mom, I actually can't not do that because it's like a muscle memory
Yeah.
thing. My tongue says the words without even thinking about it because of the fact that it's so ingrained in me.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same thing with not bragging. A lot of women, they have that in them so much that they almost can't, even when they know it's to their detriment, get past that. So thinking about it, like you said, being acutely aware is
Mhm,
the first step. And then sharing those achievements incrementally, I think is a
mhm.
really big way to win long term. If you wait until your full year review or you wait until some big moment where you're about to have to get a promotion, interview to happen to get promoted, it's too late at that point. Like you should have
Mhm,
been advocating for yourself and speaking your work and talking about your achievements every week, every month.
mhm.
You don't need to wait until you have to give someone a list of 500 things you've done over the last 10
Yeah.
years because number one, you're going to forget some really cool stuff. And number two, then it is just like, okay, well, they compile these things. It's a lot for someone to take in. But if you
Mhm,
went into your supervisor's office weekly or monthly and said, hey, here's what I'm working on, here's the results we're seeing,
mhm,
here's this magazine that I made, this
mhm.
issue got a lot of great feedback, whatever it is, and they know it's not just you and you're giving your team credit, like you said, there's a
Mhm.
balance, but it's still bringing that back to like here's the work I'm doing and it matters and
Yeah.
here's what we're achieving. So I love that thought of like weekly check-ins, but even if you can't do that, a monthly check-in is a powerful thing. do
Oh,
you
I
do, you do
love
that
that
with your
idea.
supervisor?
I love that idea, Stephanie. I will start.
Yeah, yeah,
I
it's
mean, I think
powerful.
I think, recognizing accomplishments as a culture,
Mhm.
the NGA does have, a pretty great culture of elevating one another, and
Yeah.
that does make it a little bit easier to just take a compliment, or to recognize an achievement as your
Mhm.
own. But as a personnel manager, that's something that I wanna be doing all the time when my folks are doing
Yeah.
something stand out.
Yeah, that's a great little way to also do it in front of other people because,
Mhm,
everybody loves that. Even if
mhm.
you act like you don't love it, somewhere deep in you, you're like, wow, I just got recognized for this hard.
Yeah.
I worked for this for 6 weeks or 8 weeks or a year or whatever it is.
Mhm,
And to hear, hey, you did a great job of this, Katie. Like, I'm so proud
mhm.
of you in front of other people. It's so validating and
Yeah.
it does help. So I always try to do that as a manager with my team. I think it matters. And also, then when you do have to say, like, hey, on this, maybe we can do a little
Mhm.
different next time, that correction doesn't matter as much because you've done 15
Yeah.
compliments that were genuine in the first part. They're
Mhm.
not worried when you walk in like, oh no,
Mhm.
she's coming to get me. It's like, hey,
Yeah.
she's on my team. So
Yeah.
I love that. Well, the next habit is one that I think is really interesting for women that are learners and love to learn and dig deep into the technical aspects. And that is overvaluing expertise, thinking
Mhm.
that you have to know everything about everything as it pertains to your role or the industry or all those
Mhm.
things. How do you prioritize between really measuring like if you're good at your job and you're doing your role correctly and
Mhm.
becoming an expert? And what steps do you then take to make sure that this is a top priority, but not overdoing it to where you're losing yourself in the weeds when you
Yeah.
should be thinking about that higher level stuff, especially I think as a manager, feeling like you have to know everything in that managerial role to be able to support your team well. How do you deal with that and balance that?
Mm. I think number one is having curiosity and is welcoming learning. As an adult, it is we are not often given an opportunity to celebrate learning as an adult.
Yeah.
Um, and to just do something for the sake of learning, not for expertise or whatever, just to learn it.
Mhm.
Um, I am a swing dancer. I don't do it as much
Oh,
as I used to, but about 10 years ago when I was living out in LA, we started swing dancing. And
that's so cool.
I did not enter this activity wanting to become a professional. I did not enter it wanting um, to be to compete and put on the little numbers and do all of that. I did it because it was great fun and it was a really amazing way to meet people. Um, but I learned a heck of a lot, and I
Yeah.
travel to conferences and work with incredible instructors and just learn for the love of learning. And
Mhm.
I think if you just sort of take in everything professionally, personally, as an opportunity to take that in and to not feel less than because you're just at the beginning of something.
Yeah.
That is so important. It is, I wasn't a manager until I was. and
Yeah.
uh, you can read a lot of books, you can listen to podcasts, but you learn the most by working one-on-one by experience, and then you start to manage somebody who's a totally different personality, and you just do your best. You see what works, what doesn't. And if you take it personally when things don't go well, you're never going to get anywhere.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. You just have to be, you can't expect yourself, as you said, to know everything and do it right the first time.
Yeah. I've learned so much from my failures. Like those real
Yeah.
ugly, like horrible failures in my life have taught me more than like the successes on the gold medal stand would ever be able to teach me because
Yep.
you don't forget those lessons. And the more they sting, the more you learn, I feel like. And we all go through that, you know. And I think constantly having to know that we are going to get better and evolve, and then there's just going to be another challenge at the next level if you're continuing to push yourself. And that's another thing I see really a lot of people, not just women, this is I
Mhm.
think a world problem, is that we get in this comfort zone, and in the comfort zone, like it's like a warm blanket, you know. And I
Mhm.
always say the devil is a comfort blanket that wraps us around to like try not to push any further. But when we start to get out of that comfort zone, it is really hard to want to keep going sometimes. So maybe you have a job that you want to go after, a promotion, something at a different company, but like the job you're in, you got it checked off. Like you're good, right? So to go after that big thing that might not turn out the way you want it to is scary as hell. Like it is
Mhm.
really scary. So you got to balance that as how do I know what I really want and what is success to me? And I think that expertise is sometimes you don't need to have a doctorate level in every single thing.
Mhm.
Sometimes a master's degree is okay, and sometimes a bachelor's is okay, and sometimes like a kindergarten education is okay. Just like you said with the swing dancing, you
Mhm.
started at the lower level, you were having fun and doing these amazing things. If we can make learning fun and try
Mhm.
to make it a challenge and like gamify it, I think we all do a lot better. I know I love to win, so that gamification is like the
Yeah.
key for me wanting to do something. But it's really hard to feel that way sometimes when you're centered by people that have maybe been there for 20 years and they know the ropes and you're the new person. So that's a great way to look at it. Is like I'm just here learning, and you know, if you probably could teach them something too. You know, if you're around a
Oh,
place
for
that's been 20
sure.
years, you have things that you could teach them.
Oh, the new perspective is so powerful. Yeah, and as somebody who does work on hiring, I think I am much more interested in someone who loves to problem solve
Yeah.
than in somebody who, maybe has done the job
Hmm.
for a while, but but isn't necessarily as comfortable, you know, pushing the envelope and
Yeah.
trying something new. Um, we don't know what the world is going to hold. In January 2020, we were looking out at our annual forecast thinking it was going to be XYZ, and holy
Yeah.
moly, like everybody had to adjust. And it is hard to adjust. But if you have people on your team who are okay with that discomfort, who are okay with knowing that they don't know everything, but that they can do a good job by knowing the fundamentals, understanding the goal, and knowing they will do their best to get there. I mean, and be able to pivot like on the way, you're going to be in great shape.
I agree. And for young people that aren't sure, they're not qualified for whatever they think is coming
Mhm.
their way, the answer is you probably aren't qualified, and neither were we.
Yeah.
So just keep doing it and trying and be hungry, like you said. And I love
Mhm.
the word you use, curious,
Mhm.
because if you ask enough questions to the right people, you will eventually figure it out between their answers and you testing. You'll keep A/B testing like in marketing until you get to where you want to go. And I
Yeah,
love that principle of curiosity. I think that's one of the best words in the English language. It makes a lot of sense for me to look at your life that way, and you'll be successful if you're curious and you're hungry at the same time, I think.
I agree. Yeah. Yeah, and just one thing you said about, recognizing that you're not being okay with not knowing everything. Um, when you are filling out your resume, it or when you're looking for jobs, it's okay to take a job that your resume doesn't match
Mhm.
100%. If you look at that job and say, "I want that job. I could do that job." Write a cover letter that says why.
Yeah.
Write a cover letter that says, here is the experience that I have that I think could be applied here." And that's going to go a long way. Uh, Companies are looking for folks who are creative and interested in taking on new challenges.
And that's great advice, especially for young people that are coming out of school
Yeah.
and don't have any experience really. I mean,
Hmm.
we just hired a social media manager. She's about to graduate, and she's awesome and she's hungry. And I've taught her, what B2B and B2C means, just
Hmm.
little things like that. Well, guess what? There was a day when I had no idea what that meant.
Yeah.
I remember the first meeting I sat in where they used the word EBITDA, and I had
Mhm.
to Google underneath the table,
Yeah.
what is EBITDA? And then I think after I Googled it, I still didn't really understand what the hell
Yeah.
it meant. But we all have to do that. So I
Mhm.
think it's important. And the more people like us that can talk about this and openly say, hey, we didn't know anything either. And
Mhm.
I still learn stuff every single day. And especially as rapidly as technology is changing, like
Yeah.
every day is basically an experiment.
Mhm.
Especially in entrepreneurship. It really is. That is
Yeah.
truly it's like the voyage across the Mediterranean Sea every day. You never know where you're gonna end up.
Yeah, but you're killing it. You're doing
Thank
such
you.
amazing stuff,
Oh,
Stephanie.
I
It's
appreciate that.
been so great to work with you and to have your voice join our meetings. I just feel so delighted. So thank you.
Well, I feel already very at home with the glass industry, and maybe it's because I'm a door nerd, and glass nerd and door nerd is pretty close.
Yeah.
It's a synonym for sure, but I appreciate that. That's very kind of you to say.
Mm.
Well, the last thing with question that I like to ask everyone that comes on the podcast is, this is called the grit blueprint.
Mm.
And we have grit as a word because I love that word. To me, it means strength, and I'm a strengths
Mhm.
development coach. So it's all tied in. What does the word grit mean to you, and how do you use it in your life and career to be successful?
Mm. I think grit is resiliency. It's tenacity.
Hmm.
It is, I mentioned that I have a toddler. It's learning to push through. One big thing that we are working with her on is like, she is too. She's not
Mhm.
gonna do anything the first time,
Yeah.
right? And every single time she gets frustrated after not getting it
Yeah.
time one. And if we do it, she's gonna think she's never gonna be able to do it.
Yeah.
So how do you teach a resilience to a 2-year-old? Well, that's its own challenge. But how do you teach yourself to stay resilient when
Yeah.
I mean, for her, it's like trying to get her slip around, that's hard. For us, our problems are a lot harder, and you can really feel like you're letting people down, like you're letting yourself down, like you're letting your company down if you're not able to push through. But yeah, I think that grit and that belief, that you just gotta, keep going and keep trying. And we're not gonna have the answers all the time,
Yeah.
but we can at least keep moving forward.
Yeah, resilience is one of the words I definitely think it resonates. And thinking about your 2-year-old and probably some of the struggles, I can only imagine. I have a golden retriever that's about to be 3, and we have the same problem.
Yeah.
She's a little more stubborn than I'd like her to be about things, but it's hard to think about those problems when we were young. You think about when you learned to walk. I mean, probably none of us remember that, but how many times did you fall down before you literally took those first few steps? And then probably not long after that, you were running. I mean, a lot of times kids just go from one to the next, but we fell down a lot trying to get there. And I think sometimes in life, we don't let ourselves fall down enough before we walk a few steps and then we can run. And it doesn't have to be this long drawn out thing in between those two things. Sometimes it's not, sometimes it is. It's an arduous, long journey, but that grit will keep you sustained when you feel like you can't anymore, and when your willpower and your discipline sometimes is like, whew, I can't do this anymore. Grit and that motivation don't have to be at the same time. Grit stands when motivation fails, and that's what it means to me.
I think that's so right, Stefanie. Yeah, it is. I mean, it's that learning mindset, that growth mindset. Just recognizing that, we're not going to get things right away, but if it can become a habit, if your growth in whatever it is, whether it's cooking or cycling, running, running business, if you have a habit of continuing to learn, and that's just how you do, you're going to be able to get through the patches where you keep falling.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I'm so excited I got to know you a little deeper and hear about your amazing career. You're doing awesome things at the NGA. And if you haven't met Katy, she's going to be at the BEC Conference. Please come join both of us in Nashville in March.
Yes.
And we are going to be there talking about AI and seeing all the amazing things that the industry has to offer. And then they can also connect with you on LinkedIn. So I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining me. And we will hear and see from all of you next time on the Grit Blueprint. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Stefanie. Thanks, everybody.